Assembling the MCU fans, welcome. JT, producer Tim, tier maker time. We promised it in our Agatha all along recap that we're going to be ranking the MCU Disney Plus shows on a tier list scenario. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to do this. I know when we talked about Agatha, it was very hard to not say how we felt compared to the rest of the Disney Plus series. So it is good now to finally give it its proper flowers, along with a lot of other shows that maybe some people didn't pick up on
Yeah.
or didn't pick up. Period. But yeah, I'm ready to do this.
All right. Well, there's 11 of them since what, 2021? When did the first one roll out? I think it's 21, right?
Yeah, I think so. It
Yeah.
was right after Black Widow. I think the first show was WandaVision.
Right. And it was supposed to originally have been Falcon, right? I think they reshuffled due to editing and other stuff.
Right.
So they kind of got it off already to a little bit of a rockier start with the timing on some of the things. And I think there was a little bit of continuity in there that got a little screwy due to that. But they've pretty much fell into a nice little cadence. Um, so we'll touch on them all here. We're going to rank them purely on enjoyment, like what we felt was the best of
Right.
the best. I mean, some of that could bleed into do we want more of it, but I didn't want to base it solely on that because it may be a perfect story that doesn't need more, and it shouldn't be punished because of it in the long run either. So we have 11. We're going to do one S, one D, and then 333 in the middle. Julie, tell the story. Tim, have you seen all of these?
I have.
Okay. So I have not seen Mrs. Marvel.
Okay.
That's the only one I did not get to see. I did see the Marvels movie, so I got the gist. And
Yeah.
I've seen all of What If season one and half of two. So
Yeah. I've seen most of What If, and
okay.
I saw the only other show that has a multiple season is Loki. And
Yes.
so I'm fully caught up on Loki as well.
All
So
right. And I guess we could have done a Loki one and two if we want. We can kind of say maybe where they fall. But and there's also the Guardians Christmas special, which I thought was actually quite good as well. But
yeah, I think that falls kind of in like a, because you could also do like what was the werewolf movie,
oh yeah, that one I didn't
or
see either.
or
Wolf,
the small series?
yeah, Wolf by Night or something.
Yeah, or werewolf by night or something like that.
Yeah, and I didn't
Yeah.
say I Am Groot either. I don't think I watched those. I think those are like shorts or whatever. But
Yeah, they're like specials. They're not counted as a part
right,
of like the series per
yeah,
se. They're offshoots.
right.
So
Okay. Well, we got the main 11 here for sure. And like I said, we can, if we want to split up Loki as we talk, we can do a Loki one and two and just kind of say where we think they would land within
or
this
we can
construct.
average them out and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yep, for sure.
Okay. So should we go chronologically to keep it fair, I guess?
No, because I want to put something directly in the bottom of the list right now. Like I want
D,
to
C,
start
or
our
D?
foundation. D.
All right.
Period.
All
The
right.
worst of the worst for me is Echo.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't mind Echo. And that's only because we get a lot of Wilson Fisk is in there, right? Quite a bit in Echo.
Right.
And he's awesome. So like I didn't mind it. I do think it was I don't want to say I wanted more because I think we were okay, but I think they could have fleshed things out a little bit better. Now this almost is like, we dove into on Agatha some of the like the kind of black magic witch lore. This seemed to go more into like the Native American spirit
Hmm.
lore, right?
Right.
But we didn't get as much of the influence like we did with Agatha. Like there wasn't as much in there. It kind of tried to be more than that while sprinkling it in. So if you're not as like dialed in, I think on some of that spirituality, probably not going to speak. I think Fisk really carries this one. The actress who played Echoes, I thought was great too, at playing that character. So she did really, really well. So I mean,
Yeah. I can give my reasoning for why it's the bottom.
yeah,
One, it's 5 episodes.
right,
Like it's super short, and the first episode is literally a recap of another show that we're going to rank.
right, right,
So like, so really it's 4 episodes.
right.
And I think that Echo, the character, is better showcased in the Hawkeye show.
Yeah,
that we get. I feel like Echo is nothing more than kind of like a bridge between or a building a bridge to the Daredevil Born Again because of the Wilson Fisk Kingpin carryover, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was a way to. I think it was a Fisk show more than anything. I think it was a way to set up what he's going to look like and what he's going to be to give some of his background beyond just Daredevil and introduce him to this world. Um, I think this is we talked about this in the Agatha, right? Not every character needs a spinoff. Um,
Right,
some were worthy, and not that she wasn't worthy of one, so I'm fine with it.
right,
But at the end of the day, it comes down to it's the old W Network argument, right? Like they own it. It's content. Did it hurt
right.
anything? No. So I
No,
think, I think being 11th on the list of 11 doesn't make it bad, right? But for us, it's the worst of the worst. So I'm
right.
okay with it. I'm not gonna argue it needs to be higher. I don't know if I thought that was where you were going, but I guess we could talk Secret Invasion next, because maybe a springboard's off of that, because that's one I thought had a lot of potential
Right.
to really set up a phase of the MCU with like the scrolls, and you're not who you think you are, and who knows all this time who's really been who, right? We saw that play out with God, Samuel L. Jackson,
Nick
Nick
Fury.
Fury. I always go to Nick Cage first in my head. Luke Cage, Nick Fury.
Right.
Um, so like the potential was really there, but that was also overall just got a little bit sloppy in its storytelling. And you also had like the weird AI opening hanging over it with like during a time where like there was a fight really over like using artists versus computers, right? Like and Marvel really
Right.
found itself in it. And they did that was like a very controversial, chaotic stuff with that too, which didn't kind of help during that time. I feel like it overshadowed some of the show. Like, it's like all the complaints about that.
And to me, I think that it fails because of how star-studded that cast is.
Mm.
You've got Amelia Clark making her MCU debut. You've got Sam Jackson back. You've got is it Ben Kingsley?
Yep. Yep.
Ben Kingsley reprising his role. You've got
I mean, Dermot
um
Mulroney. Like you have a lot of names in there.
yeah, you have so many names. And
Cheadle's in it.
the show just can't get out of its own way. I liked it. Um, but it's not to say it didn't have its flaws. Like I think I liked it in spite of itself. Um,
It's another six
especially
episode one too.
yeah, but and it was like I understand they try to do like the spy thriller
Yeah.
aspect of it, but I feel like they tried to be something more and they kind of lost themselves in the midst. Um I would have liked more. I would have liked something a little more substantive,
Yeah.
but I mean, I
And it
guess the
feels like it's
cool
one of the ones that has the loot, like Echo 2, you get Fisk, but this one also feels like loosely related to the rest of the greater. Not that everything's going to tie into the big story, but
right,
this one really felt like, all right, well, it fills us in what Fury had going on, but like, I don't know if unless we see down the line again that some of our favorites were actually scrolls, right? Which we could go back to, I guess, at some point and say, hey, that really
right.
wasn't so and so, right? It was a scroll pretending to be so and so. So
Well, that's kind of like the big takeaway from the entire show was that Rhodey was a scroll.
right.
And so like how long
For how
was he a
long? Yeah.
scroll?
Yeah.
Right. Like has he been a scroll since the accident and the Rhodey we had at the end of Endgame that helped save the world was
Right.
actually a scroll? And like how many other people have we thought we've lost, quote unquote, or not
It
even
is a way to
lost,
get
but
out of death. Yeah. I mean, it's a way to bring
yeah,
back, Black
it's
Widow.
absolutely a way.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
bring back Black Widow, bring back
yeah.
original Black Panther, which we probably won't, not for actual death, but
Right.
TV death for sure. But yeah, Secret Invasion just wanted a little more, not enough. There's still more juice in the squeeze on that show, and they just kind of let it hang.
All right, let's hit Miss Marvel again. It's not one I saw. I thought Comic-Con was great as a character. I thought she's great in the Marvels movie, which is I think is one everyone was down on as it was coming out, and then saw it, low expectations, and everyone was like, "Oh, actually, that was pretty good." I thought they
Yeah,
did a strong job with it. I think she's a really captivating
she is.
performer, and she's a diehard fan that bleeds into the screen for sure. So I didn't see the show, so I'll let you kind of rank it for us, but.
So I again, the rankings of these shows are not like,
Right.
it's not based on bad or good. It's how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, within
Um,
this 11. I mean, it could be better
right,
than other
and
stuff. Just
and it's tough because there's some world beaters near the top of this list that, like, I don't know how they're gonna get closer unless they start pulling characters that I love more. But if you're very if you are open to seeing the dynamic of a teenage girl in a different type of life, like,
mhm.
if you're really open to, like, the Desi Indian type vibes from the show, you'll enjoy this a lot more. I think mileage varies based on, like, if you can get past this. It's gonna come off sounding very weird and very wrong, but it's like, if you can get past the fact that it's an Indian girl, like, this is actually a great show.
Right.
um Maybe some of, like, the family melodrama will get missed on you, but it's just more of an openness. Like, people like me don't necessarily, we're not super keen on the family
Mhm.
dynamics of an Indian family. Who'd have
Yeah.
thought? um but I thought it was really cool, and it was a good take on, you know a kid who loves the heroes, eventually becoming somebody who joins them.
Yep.
And I
And I
think
think
that if
it
you,
likely laid a lot of the groundwork for the movie.
for
But
sure,
they did a
like,
good job in the movie too of establishing her because again, I didn't see the show, but I thought they did a good job early in that movie, kind of setting up what that would look like for those that didn't. Yeah.
yeah, to give you the exact point, the beginning of the Marvels is the end
Right.
of
The show.
Miss Marvel, where Brie Larson's Miss Captain Marvel switches places with Kamala Khan, um, in there. So it's like perfect.
And I
I
mean,
like
like I
the
said,
show.
she's great. I'm sure it sounds like she'll be one of the leads in like the next gen Avengers, and as she should be.
Right, for sure.
All right, let's get to the other controversial one on the list. That's She-Hulk. There's a
Oh,
lot of online discussion and hand wringing on this one, right? This was at the peak of MCU. Disney's gone woke, and now look at what she's twerking and like. But I thought the show itself, like as far as a fourth wall breaking show, it's not Deadpool, but like they did okay with some of the goofiness in there. You have to be an open mind again to allowing yourself to be taken out of the universe a bit. Again, it is similar to Deadpool in that regard, where it almost exists looking in at these shows versus within the show. I thought the actress that played She-Hulk was fine in the role. Mark Ruffalo did a good job in there as well,
right.
overall. So again, I think it was fine. Like I don't think it deserved the hate it got. I think it's fine in the C tier just because of the quality of what's still to come on our discussion. But I think I'd actually.
It hurts me to put it in C because I actually enjoyed the show, and
I think I'd have it ahead of
um,
Secret Invasion.
I just have it kind of all together.
Yeah.
I haven't like ranked them or put them in a
We can rank
specific
at the end,
lineup.
but I think I
Yeah,
would have it at the top of this tier.
yeah, that's pretty close. Like, I personally, I'd probably put it up a level and maybe move another show
Well, let's
down.
see. We may get there.
Um, but I'm fine with it being like this gatekeeper. The show itself is great. If you follow the comics at all, you kind of knew that
Yeah.
She-Hulk is very much like Daredevil, to the fact where she's probably breaking the fourth wall canonically before Deadpool
Right.
does.
Right.
But people who just watch it at the face value for television is like, oh, they're just trying to do a Deadpool thing, but they don't have Deadpool yet. That's not what it is. She is being true to herself in the show. Um,
You subconsciously mentioned Daredevil there. That's one I didn't care for the presentation of him in that. I think was my
right.
only one of my main issues. I liked him being in it as a soft launch, and obviously he had the one scene in Spider-Man. But the look and then like the walk of shame, I think that's gonna like kind of age poorly with them. Maybe at the time they didn't know they were bringing the show over. I don't know, but like I expect Daredevil Born Again to be similar to the Netflix Daredevil, which is very dark and fucked up, right? So like uh I don't know. I think that they're gonna look at that as like, oh shit, like kind of a miss. Like they could have used a bunch of different people for like, hooking up with her and then having the funny walk of shame. Like Daredevil to me probably was one. And I know Matt Murdock does have some comedic moments, but it's like,
Right.
I don't know. It felt like that was the one piece of that stuck out to me. Is like, it was a little forced.
Well, to me, it kind of made sense, right? Because all of the doom and gloom of Daredevil and Matt Murdock is based in Hell's Kitchen, right?
You're right.
He is in LA as a favor to his
Yeah.
costume maker. And so
I don't
it's
know.
a change of scenery for him. He's kind of here as like it's a working favor, so he doesn't have to be like serious blind attorney who also beats people up for fun or to save his city. He's just
I
nobody
think them
really
just hooking up would
knows.
have been fine. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like nitpicking one scene, but the walk of
Yeah, I
shame
think yeah.
was like
I
probably
thought it was
one.
cute. I thought it was funny. Like I like him holding his helmet and people are like, "Hey," and it's like, "Hi." And
Yeah, I guess.
it was fine. I think where the show really hurts is the lack of an actual villain.
Yeah,
Like the villain is society
right.
in the show, which you get to like the wokeness. I get what they're going. It was a very big swing, but in these types of shows, you kind of have to have a big bad evil guy. Um, and for it to not be Abomination and for it not to be like the other big villain and it ends up being like the nerdy guy,
Yeah.
just it fell flat for me.
This
But
is one
all
where
the
it
lead
seems like
up,
there's really no threading, like either. Like, you know, unless she's going to be in other stuff, but it sounds like they're kind of done with her. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But this one really felt like it had no ties to anything else. It was just a story. Like Miss Marvel sets up the Marvels, which sets up Comic-Con being a young Avenger. Secret Invasion at least gives us, like you said, Rhodey as a Skrull,
yeah,
and explains some stuff with Nick Fury. And again, even Echo brought in Wilson Fisk. Well, Hawkeye did, but Echo really established him more as the real Wilson Fisk than
yeah.
Hawkeye did, and he's going to be a major player in both, I think, Spider-Man and Daredevil. So, um, I don't know.
Well,
I talked myself.
She-Hulk sets up the Thunderbolts a little bit because of the reforming of the Abomination, him being able to control it,
Yeah,
freeing him as a part of society, and then eventually you'll get Thunderbolt Ross, who eventually pulls up the Abomination
I guess, but
to
I
be a
think you
part
kind of
of
could
the
have gotten
group.
there anyway. Like beyond that, I guess.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a solid foil. I was definitely more interested in Abomination and like his
being rehabbed.
rehab,
Yeah, yeah,
which I thought was cool, and like the crossover with Wong and um the crossover with Daredevil and
yeah.
Hulk
No, maybe
and
there's more in there than
Hulkling.
I thought. Yeah,
Like there's so much in the show that they couldn't stretch it out.
right.
But I thought it was fun, and Megan the Stallion's in it, so it's not bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's rank within the C as we come back. Let's
Okay.
do Moon Knight because I think that's one. That's another kind of, I don't think all controversial, but I feel like you either hate it or you love it.
Right.
I'll be honest. I found myself getting lost a lot during it. I think
The
it's the most
jumpy.
high concept show they've done. Like you really
Yeah.
have to. Um, it may be the least superhero one besides Agatha, which we'll talk about that they've done, where it was very like just a psychiatrist's dream, I guess. I don't know. It was all about like his inner fight and split personality, and I think there's a lot in there. And it was not a show to watch, which is probably what I did a lot of time. Like I cram these in at night, like before bed. Like so, not the one to watch probably at 11 o'clock at night when you're kind of zoning out. You really need. So it might be one for me that's worth a revisit. I do think it was entertaining and interesting, but again, one that didn't have a ton of ties to a larger picture. It does sound like they are bringing him back as a character. I don't think he's dead and gone, whether it's another season or in a movie. I'm not sure, but it sounds like Moon Knight is going to return in some fashion.
Right. Moon Knight's a part of the Marvel Knights, which they are seemingly doing something with, but depending on what you're following and the cancellation or uncancellation of the Blade show or Blade
Mhm.
movie, that directly revolves around Moon Knight. Moon Knight did take big swings. This is another instance of kind of going what you were talking about with Echo, right? They own the property.
Mhm.
They need the content, and Moon Knight is a beloved character, but he is definitely not um at the same level or even the same like admiration of other shows that we have yet to rank, right? The MCU fan base doesn't have the same equity in this like they do with a Loki or a Captain America or a
Right.
Bucky Barnes or a Wanda and Vision or even Hawkeye to a certain level. You're really trying to create something. Oscar Isaacs does a fantastic
Mhm.
job in this show. He eats up every scene he's in.
Yep.
To be able to play 3/4 separate characters in the show, really awesome. Um, if you can follow through the weebly wobbly timey wimey, which character is he now, you kind of grasp a hold of it. Um, and Kit Harrington plays a pretty decent part, and he should be um featured later as we get into like the Marvel Knight stuff. If we
Right.
get like Midnight Sun or Midnight Suns or something like that, we'll get there. But all in all, I think B to me. If there's any switch between B
Yeah.
and C, it's She-Hulk up and Moon Knight down. Um, but I think Moon Knight is fine where it is. It's kind of like again between
Well, and
that and
like we said with
She-Hulk.
Echo, Echo was very focused on like the Native American spirituality, whereas Moon Knight really leaned into like the Egyptian
Right,
gods. But that said, it didn't seem like it know what it really wanted to be. Like it was
right,
half that, but also then exploring what it's like to grow up with a bunch of trauma, separate yourself from that, and then grow out of it. Right, like that. There was like these two battles of leaning into the Egyptian gods and also, hey, this is a fucked up dude who's got a split personality,
right,
which would have been fine, I think, for a season one. But the fact that they then try and do this whole thing where he, awakens the trauma and basically kills this, play this fictional friend he had created to, as a safe zone as a kid, right? When his parents would be fighting.
right,
And it's a poignant, I mean, you could argue outside of maybe Tony Stark at the end of Endgame, one of the most poignant scenes in the MCU is when, he throws this kid overboard, right, and kills this side of him that he created as a safe haven growing
right,
up, to hide from the trauma, realizing he had to kill that side of himself. um, you could argue that that's one of the more poignant scenes in all of this when they do that. So
right.
I think that speaks. I just, again, it's like Echo. They couldn't decide. Do they want to lean in on the Native American and the Egyptian, mythology, or did they want it to be an action movie / psychological exploration?
Right. It's definitely the MCU TV series is um during the pandemic
Right.
of just like we're trying to put out content, things are getting shifted, and we want to put this out there. And I think that there's definitely some quality to it, but it just may be lost on the viewer.
All right. So let's do Falcon and Winter Soldier. Because I feel like this one came in with a
Wow.
with a lot of hype. Winter Soldier to me is, and I'm not doing this in any kind of order. I know we're dropping them in this order, but I'm not saying this should be B.
Okay.
I just want to talk about it next. But I feel like, Winter Soldier is a, beloved character. He's obviously in the Captain America Winter Soldier movie. He's phenomenal. This again, I feel like gets caught in between what it wants to be. Does it want to be, speaking on race relations and which is fine, stand up for that. But then like you got, Falcon is slumming it at the docks. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like after Endgame, they saved the world, and now he's like, barely getting by, making ends meet. So it's just like it's like a weird approach for what they try and be. And again, no matter what, this is the first thing post pandemic, post Endgame / Spider-Man Coda. I forget if it was this or Widow that hit first, but it was 1-2 with these two. Or did one end up coming ahead of Falcon? Was Falcon supposed to be
WandaVision
first?
is the first show.
That's right. Falcon was supposed to be first, and it got pushed due to filming. So again, I think it was meant to really establish Falcon to get in line to be Captain America. I think John Walker was a good character introduction. I thought he handled things well, or they handled him well, and again set him up to be a member of Thunderbolts going forward. But I don't know. I felt like I wanted more out of this. I thought some of the fight scenes were good. Those were well done, but it felt like it was just a tough time to come after that close to Endgame before we get some of these other ones. If we had got like Echo and She-Hulk first and then that, it might have been looked at better. But I think the expectation and the level that the pedestal that they had put themselves on, that came short. It may be something that maybe holds up better with time. I haven't rewatched it versus in the moment. It felt like, oh man, like, is this where we're at now? Right after Endgame delivered so intensely.
I don't agree fully with everything with that was said. I loved this so much. To me, I thought that it gave a realistic view on these heroes of like, where does the money come from? How do these heroes actually live? Right?
But to me, that's a Pandora's box, because now you got to answer like, okay, Falcon is in this scenario, but now how does this respond to everybody, like everybody else,
right?
Like, who still gets funded by Stark even though Tony's dead? Like, why not him? We see in other movies, Deadpool and beyond, like, Happy's still managing Stark, like it's still a thing that exists, or the Avenger Initiative. So why is this guy suddenly out slumming it post Endgame when like we see others are still out there being Avengers?
Right. I think what it is that like I think the timeline of it is relatively quick to the post, like the ending of the blip and coming back to things, that there may have been like an issue where Happy, like the estate of Tony Stark and the Avengers, because you also have to remember the Avengers were in that like limbo of being a government entity and not being a government entity. And that may tie a little bit into Secret Invasion with Rhodey and like all of that interconnectivity of like, well, now that Tony's not a part of this, Cap's not a part of this, we can possibly make the Avengers a government entity.
Right.
But, as you watch the show, with Sam having the conversations with the original super soldier, and kind of like, I cannot be Captain America and be like in the government, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like we are separate, which is why you get the spawn out now of Thunderbolts coming out. And we have the creation of US Agent in this show.
Who was great. I thought he was great. I mean, when he kills the guy with the shield,
dude.
Oh yeah, when he kills the guy with the shield's all bloody, like that's like, that's really good stuff. And Julie Louis-Dreyfus obviously is amazing.
Yeah.
Lady
Hydra.
We know we're getting Red Hulk in the movie, right? We're getting the new Captain America movie with Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America. Right. It'll be interesting if they ever go back to Steve Rogers in any way too, like, because you don't want to kneecap this new Captain America. So it's
right.
Like,
I think that there's a possibility for it when we get towards like Doomsday. When we get to the new Avengers stuff, because there's definitely, we've leaned too far into the multiverse to not go there. But that's the beauty of everything with the MCU, right? You don't know where exactly it's going to go, and we have a long way to go before then. There's definitely significant pieces that take place before then that we probably need to tie up before we can even start to think about Chris Evans reprising his role as Steve Rogers.
Johnny Storm for that, back, so we know that.
That's right.
He's eviscerated. All right, so I wasn't tearing these as we go, but I do think to me there was a clear line, and we're at it for me. But again, I think Falcon could possibly. Well, let's do What If, because I think it's an interesting one.
I
Because I
think
do
what
think
if, yeah,
I do think it's a great show. I think it's super well done. I like the ideas and concepts. The animation's awesome, and they do sneak in, canon shit in there. So it's not like it's a like. I think when it first came out, everyone assumed it was kind of a write off, like, oh, it's just like a fan fiction thing. But there've been things that have come from it, right? It was a Doctor Strange, right? Kind of spun into that.
Zombie Strange, yeah.
Yep, that kind of spun into it. And I think the Captain Britain, right? It was kind of come out of that a little bit,
Hmm.
with Haley Atwell. So I think like there's some pieces to this that are, and I don't know, we'll see what happens with the Watcher. Again, I didn't finish season 2. Season 3 is coming out soon. Um, so I think they lean on this to like sneak little things in for those diehards that watch everything. Uh, so I think What If is a really good gatekeeper for us on this list. Like to me, it's the bottom of the best, and then the rest. So I'd put it at the top of B because I think, to me, the next 4 are my top 4, but then we can discuss Falcon versus the other ones. But to me, like What If should be the number 1 because I think it's excellent. It's really well done. It just depends on how much you want to accept the fact that it's not like super important to the whole world. That's its
Right.
deficiency to me.
Yeah, I think that's where it is too. It's like it is a fun show, but there are minimal stakes.
Yes.
There's not anything really that I would see that gets spun out of this that
No.
is meaningful, right? Like, yes, we got a throwaway Captain Britain in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. We got
But she may come back.
zombies.
I don't know if that's
Right.
done. I think we're gonna get
I
more of
don't
that.
think it is either. I think with the the multiverse opens up so many things. Um, so literally, I think what if is doing is it is sowing the seed of all of these ancillary characters
Mhm.
that could be at any time moved through
Or in a
and
different universe, this
showcased.
is how they are. So if we do get introduced to a multiverse version, it might have been, oh yeah, we already saw this version of so and so in What If in some other world, right?
Right.
What if whatever Star Lord was, this, right? Like so, um,
Right.
if we get
Or what
another
if
Star
like
Lord
Black
someday,
Panther was Star Lord or
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that?
exactly. So I think it's a great show. I don't think we need to spend too much time on it, but is what it is. All right. So to me, these are my top 4, but I am open to discuss Falcon versus any of them. Um, so let's start with Hawkeye because I think of the 4, that's my bottom. But I am a sucker, producer Tim, for anything holiday that really leans in holiday. Like they went in hard with the theme. You don't get that with a lot of the Marvel stuff. You have the music, you have the lights. It's all during Christmas time. You did introduce Echo. You introduced Wilson Fisk to this universe. I was worried at the end of it that they killed Wilson Fisk because weren't going to keep him. I'm like, man, this is all we're going to get of him. And obviously, it just set him up to be indestructible, which is fine. It's a more comic accurate Wilson Fisk, I think, right, with the Hawaiian shirts and a little bit more comical than the Daredevil version, which is more maniacal, I guess, and more
Right.
evil. This was more of a like just a true over the top heel in Hawkeye. But this is where I do like the realistic fallout of how he dealt with the death of Black Widow and in survivor's guilt, from his best friend sacrificing herself for him and his family to live, and the world to be saved, right? Like he is in it, and that's what I really like about it. This to me felt like a more realistic version of that fallout, and we see it a little bit with Ant-Man too later when he comes back and how he deals with it, like in his movie, in his fallout from being gone, being blipped.
Right.
But I think this is like, seeing the survivor's wall and how he deals with that felt very relatable and realistic. And I thought that piece of it was good. He also is more grounded because he's a great trick shot artist, but he's also not like crazy super powered up. So this did feel real street level. We talked about the street level stuff, right? Recently. So I think like this is extremely street level. Like there's no superhero aspect to it, really. I mean, it's just the way they go about it is just a ground fight with Fisk taking over and Echo being his assassin and everything else. And then Haley Steinfeld, I think, is really good, as new Hawkeye, whatever his name is going to be.
Right.
I think she was really good in that role, and I think again with Comic-Con, she'll be one of the leads of the Young Avenger initiative. I think it'd be stupid not to position her as a top member of that.
Right. I did like Hawkeye a lot. Um, to me, I think it overperformed where I was originally going to go with it, or where I originally had it in my head before even watching. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, I hope they don't lose track of Hot Girl at all.
No, I
Um,
think everything I've seen is that she is going to be one of the lead members of the Young Avengers. Like I think it seems like it's gonna be her and Kamala are gonna be like the two main members of that. I don't think she's gone. I think she'll be a key part going forward.
right. Um, to me, I this is just like a my preference thing. I found more enjoyment in Falcon and the Winter Soldier than Hawkeye. More so just because like Hawkeye felt, while they did address serious issues, it definitely felt more like fun lovey in certain parts. Um, more so tongue in cheek with like the interaction between Hawk Girl and
Which I
Hawkeye.
thought was a fun
I thought
relationship,
it was
you know, with
fun. Like I
the
definitely
old
thought that was
miserable
fun.
man
Yeah.
and the, you know, high energy girl, right? Like trying to, and we talked about similar again to Miss Marvel, where she's obviously like
Hmm.
a fan obsessed with Hawkeye. And I like the tie-in that she was there watching him save the world during the first Avengers, right? Like
Right.
that was a cool tie-in as to how she became like obsessed with him and learned how to do all this stuff. So like I like that aspect. And you got the grumpy old man, you know, begrudgingly dragging her along for the ride. I thought that was good. And again, the Christmas stuff is always going to boost for me.
Right.
It just adds such a nice backdrop, and anything with Fisk is going to rank well. So I agreed with
For
Echo
sure.
at the bottom, even though it's Fisk driven, it's fine.
Yeah.
But Fisk and Hawkeye to me is high, and I think our big decision comes next, Tim, with these three, because I do think all three are open to being a goat tier. So I'm curious your thought. I have one in mind that I think would be number one right now, but is there one that jumps out to you?
There is one that jumps out to me. But think I think we're also in alignment too with what is the best show.
Okay,
Um,
let's do Agatha next. In
oh,
the
then
A
we are
tier.
not in alignment.
All right, you had Agatha. You had
We are not
Agatha
in
S.
alignment. No.
You had Agatha S.
Yeah. I
Oh
have
wow.
Agatha as like the best show they've done so far.
See, I would.
Um,
Yeah, I have Agatha. I would say at the top of the A, followed by Wanda. I think pairing them together to me makes sense because they're basically the same story. Wanda, I want to give a lot of credit for the unique concept, the execution, and rewarding folks that really stayed with it. Because I have a friend who's like, he was out after the first couple, and I'm like, you gotta go back and watch it because he's like, this doesn't make sense, a sitcom thing, and it was really like trust the process kind of show. Like
very trust the
you know they
process.
had to go somewhere, and if you're a mark for classic sitcoms and like kind of irreverent sketch comedy, like it was pretty funny. Some of the fourth wall breaking there, like the Modern Family stuff, and it all made sense in the end why they went this way, right? It was her
Right.
again digging into her trauma as a kid that was living in a war-torn country, who lived on sitcoms that they were getting from America years later. And we saw what Agatha does is boost, Agatha all along does, is boost WandaVision, because we see that Billy creates a hex based on his experience and his subconscious. And it was the same thing Wanda did, right? She built this hex based on her subconscious love of family sitcoms and family, right? The whole thing is really a love letter to building a family. It's just for her, sadly, her family consists of a robot and fictional children that she can't have with the
Right.
robot, right? So she had to create this world to make this happen, to keep this guy alive. So I think it's a very poignant, well done series, and I don't want to again be a slave to recency bias, because I think I could maybe rewatch Wanda this week and maybe put it ahead of Agatha, because again I think it set the tone for Agatha. I just think the two of them to me go hand in hand. I don't think we have to dive into Agatha too much. We just covered it in depth in our
Right.
previous installment if you watched our recap. So I don't think we need to like spend a lot of time there. So I'm fine with however you want to stack those two. But to me, Loki's one. We'll talk about why in a minute. But go ahead. Give me your thoughts on
Yeah.
Wanda.
So my thoughts on WandaVision, I actually did just rewatch WandaVision. Um, it is definitely fun, and it's like it is a good table set, and I did enjoy the drama, or not the drama, but like the evolution of the eras of Wanda, like going through like black and white television and
Mhm.
moving forward until eventually we realize that what is being seen from the Shield team
Yep.
outside is what Wanda is projecting out, and that
Right.
everyone inside is very different. Um,
And
and we
Darcy's
get
a great addition in there too. I don't want to overlook her. Big part of that show.
always, I will support her being in any MCU show or movie that they want to put her in. She's a fantastic character and a fantastic actress. Um, but I don't think WandaVision is better than Agatha all along. I think that um it is a self-contained story, yes, and we do get White Vision out of this,
Mhm.
but aside from that, it felt as though WandaVision was merely, not, I don't want to say merely, but it was a huge setup for
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. That
And
absolutely was.
that movie gets a bit maligned too, right? With
Mhm.
the whole, with directly surrounding Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
And
She's gonna get
like,
her. I think she'll get her flowers soon. Like they're gonna turn her back in one of these movies and make her, whole again versus going
hopefully,
out as a heel in the way she
yeah.
did. Obviously, again, the whole thing's been about her obsession with building a family, and that leads to her just going insane in that movie and murdering everyone. It's another story for when we get there, but I'm fine with Agatha of WandaVision because I do think they took the general concept and improved upon it. Plus, again, we talked
Hmm.
about the witches lore and all that stuff. I think Loki's number one because I think it's in 2 seasons, so you get a lot more, and I don't think there was any drop off by having more. I
Right.
think the acting is fantastic. I think it gave the spotlight. This is the first one that really gave a spotlight to a character that would not have gotten this much depth in the movie in Loki. And it made him such an important figure within the universe. Owen Wilson, I think, is awesome in everything to do with it. I love in season 2 getting his backstory as to how he ended up where he ended up and why he's in the TVA. The TVA concept again can be a little high level, kind of like not as much as Moon Knight, but like it's you really got to kind of pay attention because it can draw you out of things. But uh, I loved in the latest season 2 when they're, or was it season 1 or season 2 where they go and meet all the other Lokis, alligator Loki, and all those things. Was that 1 or
Yeah,
2?
season one.
Yeah, so the end of that, right? The finale of that when they're in that nether world there, and they, the end times, right? And they see all the other Lokis, and you have the old fat Loki, which was great. I thought that was really funny how the Loki basically is an embarrassment in every universe. I like in season 2, Sylvie at you know McDonald's or Burger King, wherever it was, with the classic '80s, just kind of camping out, hiding there. I thought that was well done with him trying to track and chase her down. And I do think of all the shows we've talked about, this is the one that has the most long-term fiber connection to the entire MCU, right? Because Loki is the biggest. You could argue of all the characters in these movies, him and Wanda are the biggest two, that we see. So I think Loki being the star of this, giving a backstory and depth to a character that would not have had it, giving him a redemption from his death that we see with Thanos, and also really opened the door to the multiverse and the concept of time variance within the MCU, and then ends with him getting his glorious purpose, which is what he's been after since the first Avengers when we first see him, or the first Thor, whatever it is. At the end of the day, he's here to keep time and space together and take over that role. So I think we'll see something with him in the future. Um, but I thought this is such a perfectly told story. To me, it was the most compelling of all these. It was the one, this and Agatha, I would say the one I was most waiting for week after week. Probably Wanda too. That's only because we had nothing else going on at the time. But like
Right.
those two were like, oh shit, I can't wait for the next one. And Loki to me, I think will stand the test of time. And when you look back at all this and be like, the one that was the most impactful to the entire universe, while also telling its own story.
Right. I mean, it definitely helps that it is a beloved movie character that got its own spin-off shows, and it also got tasked with being the cleanup
Hmm.
of Kang.
Yep.
It ended up having to be
Well,
that.
it both introduced and cleaned it up.
Right. Well,
In season one, it
Kang,
really introduces Kang, and then in season two, with everything that happened, they had to then retell that and eliminate Kang. So it really is kind
yeah,
of a bookend to the Kang story.
right. Well, you have He Who Remains. He Who Remains is being introduced in Loki, and then Kang really blasts off with Quantumania, and then everything, right or wrong with Jonathan Majors, and Marvel shifting away from Kang and needing to find a way to clean that up. I think, I think Jonathan Majors did a really great part. He played his role perfectly in Loki season 2. I do love Loki. I love the whole series. I think it was equal parts fan servicey and story driven. It gave you everything. Um, for me, it's not the best. Or I don't want to say best, most enjoyable to me.
Yep.
To me, the enjoyment came from the Agatha story. Um, but I do love Loki. I love that Loki ended up becoming someone of grave importance to the entire MCU, becoming the god of stories now,
Hmm.
and being like the tree that branches all of the multiverse together, um, which is a direct derivative. So, I can't be mad. Like everything on this list now is just kind of like
And if you would
nitpicky
have
and
said 2 months
shifting.
ago, Agatha is going to be number 2, like that's a high overperform. Like I don't think anyone would
Oh,
have came
for
into
sure.
that show saying like it's a
Yeah.
1B/2. I mean, just being
Right.
there to me is like pretty insane. And maybe with a season 2, it passes. I think, I think Loki. If I had to rank the two, I'm guessing 1 is probably higher than 2. But I think the fact all the volume for those two, and the fact that it did not get watered down within that volume, and that it was held as quality and standard across both seasons, to me is what sets it apart. Because it's easy to say, "Oh, well, I had more," but half of those could have been like filler, and they weren't. Like it was all very
Right.
important and driven to the story. And I think the concept of the TVA was important, because we're going to see that play out further. Kang, I get putting him on ice. There's a world where they can just have Kang played by somebody else because there's a million freaking variants of him. So like it doesn't really matter who at the end of the day. Like he was great as Kang, but if they want to keep the character, they don't need to kill the character forever. They can just have a different person playing him and say, "Hey, you look different than you did before." Well, I'm Kang from this universe. So whatever the fuck it is,
Right.
like it's fine, right? And maybe they want to give some time. I don't think we've seen the last of Kang as a character. Um, but yeah, to me, I would have Loki 1 with Agatha close. I like that. Um, you know, if you want to debate Falcon and Hawkeye quick, we can, but I think you can move Falcon at least above Moon Knight. And if you want to move it above What If too, at the very least, that puts it as a delineation point where What If is kind of the halfway. So you kind of have the top
Hmm.
5 and the bottom 5, which I think is some pretty good continuity there. So you could even argue put Falcon up to A, Moon Knight down to C, and What If sits alone at B. I mean, if you want to really kind of gatekeep it that way too, you could say
Right.
What If is kind of the barrier between the elite shows and then like the next tier down of shows, which are enjoyable but not as important, have some sloppiness. There's a lot more kind of half and half to it. Whereas that Falcon up, like all kind of mean more to the MCU and were more complete stories.
Right. No, I'm completely settled with this list. Um Again, like most of it is just a nitpick at this point.
Yeah.
Because I think that I think the delineation between A to B and B to C is razor thin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and even to the point of like the delineation between like S and A, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I could easily see many viewers of this rotating Loki, Agatha all along, and WandaVision
Mhm.
as like the ultimate
Yeah, and that's
MCU
where you
TV
usually see the
show.
debate. Wanda versus Loki was a debate forever of the top 2. I mean, that was
Right.
Agatha's now pushed its way into it. But those are
Right.
the 2 even, and they were the first 2 pretty much, right, besides Falcon. So
Right.
it says something maybe for where things have gone since, but Loki did come later with season 2 and it held up Now Agatha was very strong. So hopefully we're back on the rebound, where the best have been early and now late, and then that middle stretch where they were kind of figuring out what this was going to look like is where things sagged a bit. So, all right, that'll be a bookend really for MCU through 2024. I mean, we don't have anything new coming until Falcon in February. So we'll kind of get back on our journey. We did this little, sidetrack with Agatha and with these rankings. We will be back on it with Iron Man 2 soon. And then I think Thor comes after that. So we'll get back to it. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Let us know of any other tier lists or ideas you may have, and spread the word. Assemble. We'll talk to you soon.